Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are beginning the 2044 to 2045 offseason. The Pirates had a very successful regular season, 97 and 66 record. Lost a 163rd game playoff with the Cardinals to lose the Central Division. And then, unfortunately, although we had home field advantage for the wild card series by virtue of our strong 97 win season, we got knocked out 2-0 by the Colorado Rockies. So another strong regular season for these Pirates and another disappointing postseason for this Pirates franchise. We have now been the general manager for 7 seasons. We have 5 playoff appearances. So the good news is we've definitely proven that we can build the Pirates into a pretty consistently winning team. The bad news is that in those 5 playoff appearances, we only have 1 division title back in 2039. The last 4 years have all been wild card appearances after losing the division to the St. Louis Cardinals. And in addition to that 1 division title we've only made it as far as the National League Championship Series 1 time. So we've built a team that can consistently get into the playoffs, but we've never really come close to building a team that can win it all. And that's unfortunate because as a former head coach of a horrible football team that I root for once said, you play to win the game. And thus far we have not been able to win the game with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Looking at our salary situation, right now we're about flat for 2045 with where we were in this 2044 season. The issue is that flat salary entails losing third baseman Alex Palacio, as well as first baseman Vinny Tomei and left fielder Alex Vasquez, who we picked up in trades near the end of the trade deadline, and who all, to various degrees, provided us with a little bit of pop in the lineup over the last 2.5 months of the season, but didn't really expect to be bringing any of those players back. But we're also going to be losing 3 key relievers: Elijah Helton, Greg Gaylord, and Mario Tolka. So we lose 3 veteran bats and 3 really good relievers if we just decide to go with the status quo, because some of our players, notably shortstop Tony Cota, first baseman Luis Flores, relief pitcher Ethan Mingo, are set to receive decent bumps in arbitration. Same thing with Luis Longoria. And then our 2 star players who we did make long-term commitments to, Isaiah Hill and Tony Santana, are also getting their salaries bumped next year. So we're at a bit of a crossroads with this team, in my opinion, because we're good. We're very good in some cases, but we're not great. There's definitely never been a season where I felt like, hey, this team's going to the World Series, and when we get there, we're probably going to be the favorites. And I want to win with this team. So the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and to expect different results. Now, some of you may be saying, well, you're insane, so that's probably what you're going to do. But in this case, I'm not. So we are going to make a dramatic change. I have been talking and thinking and getting comments from some of you viewers for some time now about how we need to move on from Luis Longoria. And I did think that getting his $10 million contract off of the books this year was the right move for us to avoid having the fear of dealing with this fragile young pitcher who could go down for the season with any pitch, and also save $10 million-ish that we could use to perhaps improve our infield and our defense, because although we haven't made any wholesale changes to our infield over the past few years, I think we have generally been degrading our defense with some of the moves that we've made, and that actually showed up this past season. If you look at our team statistics, where we were 12th in defensive efficiency and 11th in zone rating. So I was thinking we need to move on from Luis Longoria and use that $10 million to invest in a little bit better defense for our infield. So maybe a new starter at second or a new starter at third. Maybe we can bring back one of these relievers. But let's be honest, that's going to basically be the team that we have now. I mean, honestly, we can bring back the exact team we have now and keep Longoria. But moving on from him is going to potentially hurt our starting rotation. And I don't think that we're just one or two good fielders away from winning it all. So it got me thinking, yes, with that fragile injury proneness and the fact that we already have him on a 90 pitch count throughout the season, Longoria is always one pitch away from a season-ending injury. But you look at what he's done over the course of his career. He's now been up for parts of 4 seasons. He's 39-19, 872 strikeouts and 598 at-bats, 2.55 SIERA. He's averaged over 4 WAR a season, and a couple of those seasons weren't even full years in the majors. If he's healthy, he is a pitcher who absolutely can outperform the $10 million that we're going to be paying him next year. If he gets hurt and misses the whole season, he's basically worthless. If we can get another 32 or 33 starts out of him like we did the last 2 years, 170 innings, closing in on 250 strikeouts, and we improve the defense behind him, he's a guy who could go 15-5 for us with 250 strikeouts and be worth a heck of a lot more than the $10 million that we're going to pay him. So what I propose doing, and those of you who have watched this series from the start will know that it pains me to say this, because I've developed an affection for this virtual player on my computer monitor. But Tony Santana, the starter that we committed to for the long term, is set to make $18 million this coming season. And although he still has a very impressive 6-pitch arsenal of average to above average to very, very good pitches, his overall stuff, movement, and control seemed to have peaked. He had 65 stuff not too long ago. He had 55 movement not too long ago. He even had 60 control not that long ago. So at least according to our scout, he's kind of headed in the wrong direction. He's also now on the wrong side of 30. And he followed up his brilliant Cy Young Award-winning season in 2043 with a pretty rough 2044 season, even though he was named an all-star because he pitched a lot better in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. But an 8-13 record with a 4.77 ERA for a guy who's now on the wrong side of 30 and whose pitching ratings seem to be starting to deteriorate, that we're going to be spending $18 million on this coming season. I've argued that with a BABIP of 323 this past year, he just got unlucky. But there is an argument to be made. Part of that could be luck. Part of that could be that his stuff is just not as good as it used to be. Part of that could be the defense behind him that wasn't all that great. But there's no guarantee that he's going to be much better. Odds are he's going to be something between the pitcher he was in 2043, but probably better than the pitcher he was in 2044. If we just cut everything down the middle, he's a 14-game winner with a 3.78 ERA, which is certainly valuable. I don't know if he's going to be that good this year. So when I look at Tony Santana, I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to get $18 million of value out of him. That's the best case scenario. I mean, if he goes out and pitches close to the way that he did in 2042 and 2043 when he had WARs of around 5, he's probably worth, $15 to $20 million. But there's no guarantee that he does that. And even if he does do that, we're just getting fair value from him. We're not generating any excess value. So what I think I am going to do is we're going to keep Luis Longoria, try to sign him in arbitration. We can probably get him for a little less than $10 million. Because if we keep Luis Longoria healthy, we could generate 5, 10, maybe $15 million of excess value on terms of what we're paying him. That's the type of stuff that helps get a team to the World Series. And if we move on from Santana, all of a sudden we've got $18 million additionally to put into this team that we can use to really fix second base and third base, probably bring back one of the relievers that we want, and honestly, maybe even help the team on some other levels. I think we can make more progress towards improving this team if we move on from Santana and his big salary number this year. Now, regardless, if we lose Santana or we lose Longoria, there's going to be a hole in the rotation. But I think we're as prepared for it as we're ever going to be. We've got a former second-round choice, Sal Valadez, who pitched decently when he came up this year. We've got Bobby Astorga, who was a fourth-round pick back in 2039, who's on the brink of making the majors. We've got Felix Bath, looks more like a replacement-level type pitcher, but still a guy who could help us as a starter. And then we've also got former third-round pick Juan Bin Daoud, who just finally came up this year and did a fine job at the major league level. So we've got 4 guys who can potentially be slotting into our starting rotation. And I can now move on from that horrible 4-man rotation from the playoffs. But we've got 4 guys who can potentially slide into the rotation. So if we bring back Longoria, Gonzalez, and Montoya, we still have the potential to have Omar Gaona as a 5th starter. We really only need to hit on one of those 4 guys, and we've still got a decent rotation. And I think out of those 4 players we talked about, one of them can probably develop into a 2 or 3 starter. One of them can probably develop into a back end of the rotation starter. 2 of them probably are not going to make it or just end up as end of the bullpen filler. But if we can hit decently, and again, it's not expecting them all to be a Luis Longoria or even what Tony Santana once was. But if we get a number 3 and a number 4 starter out of those 4 pitchers, our rotation is fine. And we can invest most of the $18 million from moving on from Tony Santana into trying to fix our defense, trying to add some bats, and maybe kind of changing the trajectory that this team has been on. So this is a definite audible from what I was thinking, because I was thinking, and I am petrified of Longoria getting hurt. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to drop his pitch count down to 90 for next season. We bump it up to 100 in the playoffs, and I'm going to get even more conservative with him, putting the aggressive tiredness hook on, which I probably should have had on him for all these years anyways. But I feel like if we can nurse Longoria through a season, which we have done successfully each of the last 2 years, we're going to get more than $10 million out of value out of him. And I don't think there's any way that we're going to get $18 million out of a 30-year-old Tony Santana at this point. So that is kind of the high-level plan for the early stages of this offseason. We've already made arbitration offers to catcher Nelson Ibarra, first baseman Alfredo Velasquez, second baseman Juan Rivera, shortstop Tony Cota. May try to bring back some of those free agent pitchers I was talking about. I'm not going to be bringing back the free agents that we brought on near the trade deadline. Got to decide what to do with Ethan Mingo. I think we're deciding that we're going to make an offer to Longoria. So while we're thinking about that, he's looking for $13.4 million. We'll offer him $9.6. We'll give you a bonus if you win the Cy Young Award. Sure. He's willing to think about that offer. But I've got to see what we can potentially get for Tony Santana. And it's probably not going to be full value. Part of the value, I think, is getting out of that $18 million contract for this year. But once we do that, that opens up a lot of options for us financially. Obviously, we want to boost our scouting and development budgets back at some point. And we are going to get a little bump from 142 to 150 million this year. But we're not going to win it all basically running back the exact same team that we've been running out there for the past few years. It's a very good team, but it's not a world championship team. But all of a sudden having an extra $18 million to invest gives us an opportunity to build that kind of team. Now, granted, if Longoria gets hurt, and if Juan Bin Daoud, Sal Valadez, Bobby Astorga, Felix Bath all kind of flame out, the moves that I could be making could be turning a perennial playoff team into a team that's probably going to struggle to be 500 next year. But I think the potential moves that we can make by opening up this money give us an opportunity, if we do hit on a couple of the pitchers and Longoria stays healthy and we're able to invest wisely in the team over the next couple of months, I think we build a team that gives us a chance to do something more than just go to the playoffs and get knocked out in the first round. So we're going to try to play to win the game. And I think we found the deal that we're going to take. There were lots of options for Santana. No superstars for him, but we can get some cash from the Miami Marlins and second baseman Bobby Guzman, who will be an upgrade defensively at second base for us, which is important. And conceivably, if we have to shift him to third base at some point, he's probably a close to Gold Glove quality third baseman. He's going to be making a little less than $5 million this coming season. So even bringing him on board, that's going to free up about $13 million plus for us to spend otherwise. He's a good bunter. He has some speed. Pretty decent contact hitter. Doesn't strike out much. Does not have much home run power, and not the greatest eye in the world. You know, you look at his batting performance over the course of his career, and he's been a little below average as an offensive player, at least according to his OPS plus and his WRC plus. But you look at what he did this year in his second full season in the majors, and he was better than average, put up a 4.1 WAR with some pretty nice defense at second base. So this deal opens up over $13 million for us, improves our defense at second base, improves our offense at second base, even though he's not a great offensive player, and also gives us some cash in return. Trade like this lets us potentially move a guy like Juan Rivera, who has been a nice player for us, starting at second base last year, back into more of a utility role. You know, Rivera's glove is good also. He doesn't have the same kind of arm that Guzman does. He's actually got a better error rating. Maybe it's not as big an upgrade at second base defensively as I thought, but it's definitely an upgrade offensively, because when we look at Juan Rivera and what he's done over the course of his career, he's put up a 65 OPS plus and a 63 WRC plus, and these guys have both been in the majors for parts of 5 seasons at this point. We kind of know what they are. Rivera's been a negative WAR player when all is said and done, whereas Guzman's coming off a 4 WAR season. Not that I want to get rid of Juan Rivera. I think with his glove and his defensive versatility, his speed, and a not great bat, but not brutal bat, that he's got a lot of value as a utility infielder for us, a backup if and when we have some injuries in the infield. But I think Bobby Guzman is a better guy to be starting at second base every day. So we're going to go ahead and start freeing up some money. Thank you, Tony Santana. You have been here since day one of this, all 7 seasons. You even came up the year before we took the team over. And you had a losing record the year before we took over the team. Never had a losing record again until this past season. I just don't think we're going to get $18 million worth of value out of the guy. So if we can trade him for someone who's going to be an upgrade at second base, give us some cash, and also open up another $13 million in payroll for us to bring on other players, I think it's a trade we have to make. So thank you, Mr. Santana, and welcome, Bobby Guzman. And I'm sure the fans will not be happy that we traded away Mr. Santana. I'm not really happy that we traded away Mr. Santana. But we've got to do something different with this team. Fans very disappointed. Took a big, I think, 7-point hit to fan interest. I believe we used to be 78. But it is what it is. We're opening up some money now. Got Guzman on the roster. And Jan Vasquez is going to plug him right in as our number 1 or number 2 hitter and our starting second baseman. So now we know we're going to be losing Palacio. What we also want to do is find a third baseman, because as much as I like Juan Rivera and Ethan Fox and Tony Rendon, I think those guys are going to be a lot better as utility players for us than guys going out there every day. And another guy who I was not sure what to do with was first baseman Luis Flores. He was a Rule 5 pick of us in 2041. Brought him right to the majors, and he's been pretty productive for us when he's played. But he's a fragile young first baseman. Great personality, got some speed, has been a decent hitter, but he's coming off of this injury. The issue is he's due to make $3.6 million in arbitration, and I'd been thinking that we were going to have to move on from him. But by the same token, this is a bat that's been a 124 OPS plus, 122 WRC plus over the course of his career. I don't think that a ruptured MCL is going to have a huge career-changing impact on a first baseman. Could be wrong about that, and we won't know for sure for another 5 to 6 months. But he is definitely better at first base and as a player at this point than Alfredo Velasquez, who would be the alternative. Flores is better defensively. He's got more speed. He's a better bunter. And he's also a better hitter overall. He just doesn't have the same home run power and not quite as good an eye. But you can see that Velasquez hit a $189 for us last year. Did have 18 homers and 301 at-bats, but you look at his numbers over the course of his career, 111 OPS plus, 111 WRC plus. And Velasquez, his number is going to go up to about $1.7 million next year, and we have made an offer to him. We could have them both back, but I think we need to have Flores back. And maybe that lets us use Velasquez in a trade if we're looking to maybe find a third baseman, which is what we're going to try to do right now. So we're looking for third basemen who are just average or better at contact, power, and eye, and maybe a little bit above average defensively. And shockingly, there's only 7 guys in the major league that meet that criteria. And some of them are making insane amounts of money each season. Some of them are young superstars that the Red Sox will never trade to us. But we may be able to do something with Willie Medrano from the Houston Astros, who again is, I don't think, a great player, but I think he would be an upgrade for us at third base. You look at what he's done over the course of his career, and he's been an above-average player as far as his OPS plus and WRC plus. He's generated positive WAR. He's a 26-year-old, heading into his first arbitration year, going to be making a little over $4 million. You know, he's kind of your prototypical third baseman from back in the 1970s and 1980s, a guy who's going to hit 230, 240, 250, has potential to hit 15, 20, 25 home runs, decent range, gun for an arm. I don't think he's a great player, but when I look at who we were playing at third base this past season before the trade and who is likely our third baseman next season in Tony Rendon, I think the bat of Rendon is not as good. The glove is close, but I think overall the boost we get in contact and home run power by potentially moving to Medrano is not insignificant. And when you look at what Rendon has done batting stats over the course of his career, he has been a bit below average. Again, similar to Rivera, I think Rendon can have a real important role on this team for us as a utility infielder and outfielder for that matter. Guy with some speed and a guy who can hit enough that he's not an automatic out. But I think Medrano is the most attainable of these players that are out there for us. Well, I actually know that because I've gone through all of these guys and tried to figure out, and most of them there's no way we can possibly touch. But Medrano, straight up, we have to get rid of a great player or a great prospect. But I think we can put a package together that's not going to really hurt us at the major league level. And again, give us a better bat at third base, a similar-ish, maybe better glove, and just really improve the flexibility of our team by letting Rendon move back into a more utility role. And we've got a deal together for Medrano, who, like I said, is going to be making probably around $4 million next year. So it's still going to put us close to $10 million ahead in what we have to spend. It's not painless because we do have to give up first baseman Alfredo Velasquez. But as I said, I kind of prefer Flores anyways to him. So getting him off the books is going to save us close to $1.7 million a year. And it's getting rid of a player who did have some significant playing time for us, who is definitely not good defensively. We have to give up Cortez Ronquillo, who is a starting pitching prospect, but honestly not really a prospect at this point. Did have a really nice year in AAA last year. Not quite as good this year, but he's 28 years old. He looks like a replacement level, number 5 kind of starter at best. So not a huge loss there. Victor Merokin is a little bit of a loss. He was a scouting discovery 4 years ago. Decent third base prospect, only 20 years old. Probably was going to be promoted from rookie ball to Class A next year. Dave Lozada is a first baseman, another scouting discovery. Just a brutal defensive player, no speed. Looks like his bat could be interesting, and he's going to walk a ton, but just not the kind of player that I like to have on the team. And Jose Donoso is probably the biggest loss. Another scouting discovery, great personality, can play left or center. You could play him in right, but you don't love the arm. But certainly looks like he could have a professional major league bat, and with his speed and plus contact and gap power, acceptable home run power, be a pretty decent major league hitter a few years down the line. He split this year between Class A ball and High A ball, hit .298 and .319 at those levels with 11 home runs, 39 doubles, 9 triples. So this is, probably the most painful player to lose, but he's not someone who's going to help us immediately. And as we talked about with Medrano, that's an upgrade at third base for us. Definitely offensively. And it lets us, as I said, move Rendon into more of a utility role where I think he'll excel. And I think it makes us better. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Ooh, hadn't been checking it, but Willie Medrano is actually popular. So that is positive too. Not great to lose Velasquez. Got a 2-point fan interest bump for whatever it's worth from bringing on Medrano. And presumably, when we take a look at our lineup now, Medrano will slide right in as our third baseman and actually our cleanup batter against right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching. I don't know about that. Tend to think that Isaiah Hill or Henry Gonzalez may be better in that role, but I think we've made the team better with these two moves. We've upgraded at second base and third base, and we still got an extra close to $10 million to spend that we wouldn't have had. Now, granted, as I said, it's all going to come down to, does Longoria stay healthy, and can Valadez or Astorga or Bath or Bin Daoud or some combination of those guys become good, solid major league starters for us. So I recognize this is not a riskless decision that we're making, but I think that I think it's the right decision for this team. If I want to do something other than just go to the playoffs and lose in the first round, which I'm sick of doing. And so now we've made offers to most of these guys, including Guzman, who we just brought on board. We're going to make the offer to Medrano now. Probably going to be low fours. I would think we can probably get it done. He wants to be making $20 million a year. Not quite yet from the Pirates, buddy, but maybe down the line. Oof. Seems to have a inflated version of his value compared to the arbitration estimate. But he's willing to think about $4.25 million, so that's positive. Tony Toca and David Juarez are players we're likely to move on from. Tony Toca, really good defensive player, but just can't hit. Certainly don't want to be guaranteeing him a major league contract. David Juarez is a guy we picked up as a minor league free agent signing. Good defensive outfielder, a little bit of a bat, but I don't think we want to be guaranteeing him $1.3 million next year. So we may look to see if we can trade either of those guys away. Before we move on from this first day of the offseason, though, got to figure out if we want to bring back any of these guys now that we've got more money. Mario Tolka, 34 years old, extremely popular, very proven, excellent major league pitcher. Issue is he's looking for $11.5 million a year. If we were going to spend $11 million on a pitcher in his 30s, we probably would have kept Tony Santana. Elijah Helton is 30 now. We brought him back last year mainly because he was very popular. The $6.2 million we spent on him was a lot for a reliever, although he's a good, solid reliever, as you can see from his stats. But he's looking for $6.5 million also. That seems high to us. Greg Gaylord is extremely popular, which helps. Made the least of those guys this past year at $3.5 million. I don't want to say he hasn't been as good as those guys, although he was better than either of them this past year with a 1.29 ERA and 91 strikeouts in 69 and 2/3 innings. But over the course of his major league career, he's been an above average pitcher, and he's definitely been better for us in Pittsburgh since we brought him over from Tampa. But he's only looking for a little over $4 million a year for 4 years. And given that he's extremely popular, would not be the worst guy to try to bring back. He was our closer for part of last year. So I think with the money we freed up, if we can spend about $4 million a year and get Gaylord signed, then essentially we've moved on from Santana, who we're going to try to replace with some combination of those 4 young pitchers who are starters we have in AAA. We've upgraded at third. We've upgraded at second. We've brought back a good, solid relief pitcher. And we're still going to have about $6 million in incremental value to spend when we get into free agency. So I think from a financial perspective, we're doing what's right. Whether it's going to work on the field, who the heck knows? All right, so Gaylord was looking for $4.13 million a year over 4 years. He wanted a no-trade clause. He wanted to be guaranteed the role as a closer, and he didn't want any options in the end. We're offering an average of $3.85 million, team option in the final year, and as I said, we're not giving him those guarantees that he wanted. So it's only $280,000 a year less, but the optionality has definitely moved in our favor. See what he thinks about it. He's willing to think about it. All right, so if we can potentially bring Gaylord on and potentially get these guys all signed, I think that we're moving in a decent direction as we get closer to free agency. So we haven't started hearing from any of the players that we made the arbitration offers to yet. I am going to bump our ticket price back down. You'll remember that when we brought on those 3 perennial all-stars before the all-star break, before the trade deadline, we got a huge boost to fan interest, and you can see we were able to kind of sell out most of the final third of the season, even though we jacked ticket prices up because we were so popular. Our base ticket price last year was $16 at the when we were looking to sell season tickets. I'm hoping that we're going to be a little more popular this year, so tentatively going to look for a $17 ticket price, but there's potential to change that. I'd like to put a little more into player development and scouting right now. Obviously, I want those numbers to ultimately be even higher than they are right now, but just trying to get slightly more realistic placeholders in there for us. And you see that still gives us $20 million to potentially play around with right now, which gives us the opportunity to do something when we get into free agency. And starting to make progress with some of the arbitration eligible players. Greg Gaylord, and the fans happy about that. Luis Longoria, the fans happy about that. Also signing a bunch of our minor league free agents. New addition Guzman signed. Juan Rivera signed his offer. Ethan Mingo, which the fans were excited about. Luis Flores, which the fans were pleased with. Willie Medrano, the new addition, which the fans were pleased with. Nelson Ibarra, minor league manager that we've been looking at. So bunch of salary arbitration eligible players signed. At this point, we're just waiting on Tony Cota. We also signed Gaylord ahead of free agency, and we ended up getting 9 points of boost in fan interest from 73 to 82, which is really good. Now, granted, when we start losing players, and we're going to be losing some very popular players, like Palacio, Tomei, Vasquez, and Tolka and Helton, we're going to take hits every time one of those players signs with another team. But we're not in a bad spot. I feel like we've improved the team since the offseason started just a few days ago, and we've got money to spend. And I'll couch that and say we've improved the team, assuming that some of the young pitchers can replace Tony Santana, which is not guaranteed, and Luis Longoria stays healthy enough to pitch enough innings next year to qualify for the ERA title, which is also not guaranteed. And as I've been re-signing minor league free agents, one name caught my interest. You may remember Ivan Hinojosa, who was a guy that we had the option to pick #1 overall the year that we ended up going with Henry Gonzalez. And Hinojosa was a really good pitching or catching prospect that we ended up picking up a couple seasons ago in a trade with Cleveland when his career was not really developing the way that he would have hoped it would have. And you can see that nothing has really changed there. He's been in Double-A with us for the last 3 years, hitting .267, .175, and .217, getting progressively less playing time as he's gone from being a borderline prospect to not really being a prospect. So this is, one of many examples of a player who was picked 3rd overall and who was almost immediately named the #1 prospect in Major League Baseball, just not really developing the way he was supposed to, or the way people would have hoped he might have. And we just got Tony Cota signed, so that is the last of the arbitration eligible players that we're going to make offers to. Speaking of that, need to zero out those offers for Tony Toka and David Juarez. Have tried to trade them. There's just not really much in the way of demand. We'll give it another try, but I don't think there's much to do there. Can check in on Palacio, Tomei, and Vasquez. I'm sure the amounts that they're looking for are going to be unacceptable. We're not going to be paying a 40-year-old Alex Palacio who's wrecked for $23 million. Alex Vasquez is the one who hit the best with us, 313 with 13 homers and 182 at-bats. Kind of do have an opening at first base / outfield, but $18 million. We've got $20 million to spend, but I think there might be a better way to spend it than him. Vinny Tomei, again, we kind of have a ish type of opening at first base. We got rid of Velasquez. Theoretically, Flores is going to go into that role now, which he kind of was before he got hurt anyways. Hopefully he bounces back from that injury and he's what we thought he could become. Tomei is durable. He's younger than the other guys. He also is reasonably popular, but I'm guessing the number is just going to be unrealistic for us. $8 million is not horrible. You look at what he's done over the course of his career. .139 OPS plus, 139 WRC plus. The issue is that it's been 2 full years now that he's been a below average offensive player. And he's in his mid-30s now, so that might just be what he is now. I mean, it's hard to look at a .223 batting average with 25 homers at the age of 33, followed by a .227 batting average with 19 homers at the age of 34, and feel that he's not on a downward spiral. Taking a look at the upcoming free agents and the batters. There's Palacio, as we know, Tomei and Vasquez. Jaquan Hinton, who's a little younger, a guy we had before, is supposedly only going to be looking for $3 million. They say he's impossible for us to sign. He's also durable. He's a lot younger than Tomei. I don't think he's quite as good a hitter as Tomei, but in contact and home run power, those are the 2 areas where he kind of stands out. If we could bring a guy like him on board for a few $1 million, might not be the worst thing in the world. I might also ultimately just end up looking when we get into the off season, is there someone with some salary that we can trade for? Right now, right at the end of the season, there's just not a lot of players on the trade block. Hey, our old buddy Victor Avelar is, though. Danny Cantu, a shortstop. I mean, even all players. It's a pretty small list, but that should increase as we get through the off season. And obviously we can make an offer on anybody, even if they're not on the trade block, as we just found with the additions we made of, well, I guess Guzman was offered to us, but the trade that we made for our new third baseman, whose name I have to learn and remember, Medrano, that we just kind of went searching and came up with something that worked. So that's always an option. So long version short, Tomei is borderline making an offer to. It is interesting that he's not as good in contact and home run power. as Jaquan Hinton is, but he's pretty much better in just about everything else. But if we can potentially get Jaquan Hinton for $4 or $5, $6 million less a year, I don't know that either one of them is what we need, but I don't feel like we need to make an offer to Vinny Tomei right now. Hey, and I'm definitely happy that we locked up Mr. Greg Gaylord, because he was just the unanimous winner of the National League Reliever of the Year. We talked about the brilliant 1.29 ERA. He got 29 saves, but he actually was moved out of the closer role last couple months of the season by our manager for some reason. But a brilliant season by any measure. 91 strikeouts over 69 and 2/3 innings, 7-1 record, 29 saves. A little surprised to have a unanimous winner of that award, but finally got some hardware. We didn't win any Gold Gloves yesterday. And Ricky Rios, who actually took over as the closer for Gaylord, finished 4th in the voting. He'll probably be back as our closer next year. You can see he also had 91 strikeouts in 70 1/3 innings pitched, 7-6 record, 19 saves after he took over. So with those two guys back in the pen, hopefully it will help mitigate the losses in the bullpen that we're going to be facing from moving on from Misters Helton and Tolka, who are just looking for too much money at this point for us to be able to afford. And the Reliever of the Year award for Greg Gaylord was the only hardware for the Pirates this offseason. We've slowed down in our trend of consistently winning Rookie of the Year. At one point, I think we had won it 4 out of 5 seasons, but not this year. And MVP Cy Young Award, as we talked about, Tony Santana unable to defend his Cy Young Award. NL MVP, Isaiah Hill does finish 5th in the voting, but Jose Sanchez of the Rockies, unanimous winner, 296, 60 homers, 149 ribbies for a pretty good defensive center fielder. Yeah, that sounds like an MVP kind of season. Isaiah Hill did get votes. All I can say about Isaiah Hill is that he hit 289 with 40 homers and 122 runs batted in, and it was kind of an off year for him. So he's an incredibly valuable bat for us. 2-time MVP, Rookie of the Year, 6-time All-Star, and a 4-time Silver Slugger, although he hasn't won the Silver Slugger either of the past 2 seasons. And he was the only guy on our team who got any votes for MVP. Danny Carriou of the Rangers, 3rd baseman, 327 average, 42 homers, 116 driven in, unanimous MVP in the AL. Jesus Rosas of the Royals, 14-10, 346 ERA, 214 strikeouts. It was the Cy Young Award winner there. And in the National League, Tony Machuca, former Pirate for a couple of months, who now plays for our arch rival since we picked him up in a trade deadline deal, but there was no way we were going to be able to retain him, and he's been haunting us ever since with another Cy Young Award in St. Louis. Luis Longoria got a couple of votes for us. Crazy to think that with a 6-7 record, he's getting Cy Young votes, but 248 strikeouts in 172 innings will help you get a little bit of attention from the voters. So we're a couple days from the salary arbitration hearings. Our fan interest has probably peaked at 83. We'll see how bad it gets when we start losing some players when we get into the off-season. We've got a little bit of money to play around with, as we kind of saw. I don't know that there's any obvious free agents for us to pursue. The top end of the market, those few guys are still going to be too expensive for us, and kind of the mid-range guys, I just don't know how much they're going to help us. But as we look into free agency. If there's a real high quality starting pitcher who's cheap, that's always something interesting to look at. And probably need one more bat for the outfield. Kind of feel with the trades for Guzman and Medrano, having Flores at first, Cota at short, and some combination of Rendon, Rivera, and Fox as utility infielders. Feel that we're set there. Catcher, I think we're good with Ibarra. The only question is whether we bring Quiroz back at backup catcher or we promote the youngster Rodriguez, who we drafted in the early rounds several years ago. And then the starting outfielders with Hill, Arellano, and Gonzalez are set. We've got Herrera in one. Actually, it would be much easier for you if I was actually talking about this stuff, showing you who I'm talking about. But, got Herrera in one kind of backup outfield spot. So, we kind of do have room for one more outfielder. Probably not going to be Alex Vasquez or Vinny Tomei, but if we can find a guy who can hit a little, we'll find a role for them on this team. And we've made it to the arbitration hearings, but nothing for us to worry about there. Would love to try to get a compensatory pick for Helton or Tolka, but we're not going to pay a reliever $19 million because they'll certainly hit the bid on that. And Palacio, Tomei, and Vasquez are all headed out to free agency also. So taking a quick look at the international free agents. Whoa. Sergio Alvarez is a very interesting starting pitcher who's looking for $18 million, a 32-year-old that's durable, coming over from Cuba. Don't know much about him, but would be kind of interesting if after all of this we end up bringing on another pitcher for about $18 million after getting rid of Santana making that kind of money. But boy, if we had a better scouting report on this guy, I'd be a little more intrigued. We'll certainly request it, but it's gonna maybe be too long till we can get it. But certainly someone that we have to think about if he's anywhere near as anywhere kind of near those ratings. Doesn't look like there's too much else to be all that intrigued at. Seda, if you would sign a minor league contract, we would consider bringing him into our system as a 23-year-old, good personality. Looks like maybe he could be a backup outfielder in the majors someday. And then the actual free agents, Kyle Frazier, left-handed starter. He would be a nice addition too, but looking for over $22 million. Mike Augustini, aging second baseman, probably looking for a ton of money. He's wrecked physically. Still a pretty good hitter, but not going to be a fit for us. Rogelio Loera, he's won a boatload of Cy Young awards, I believe. Yeah, oh my gosh. He's got 6 of them now. As well as a Gold Glove, an All-Star, World Champion. Durable pitcher, looking for $38 million a year. Honestly, his profile, though, looks pretty close to what we have with Luis Longoria, except for the fact that he's durable and Longoria is fragile, which is admittedly a huge difference. But, you look at their pitching ratings, and I think that kind of, shows why bringing back Longoria for about $10 million, if he stays healthy, may have been the right move. Longoria is definitely not as good. His movement and his control are both weaker. His 3 top pitches are probably better, though, than what Loera bring. Not really. Loera is just a monster, but Longoria is not all that far off of him. But another guy we won't be able to bring back, Palacio and Vasquez, we've talked about, not going there. Jorge Pozo, a 38-year-old starter looking for $15 million, pass. Cesar Soto, starter looking for $20 million. Good solid pitcher, but probably not the right fit for us with the money he's looking for. Center fielder Alex Connell, nice player. We're not going to spend $16 million on him. Another center fielder, Alex Contreras, with post-concussion syndrome, looking for $19 million. Next. Then Jose Cardoza, starting pitcher. Yeah, a respectable, kind of fourth starter. Maybe a third, maybe a fifth. Iron Man, which you like, but looking for $14 million. So certainly does not appear that we are going to be playing at the top end of this free agent market. But we've got money to spend, and actually that number looks bigger now that we've moved on to the new financial year of 2045. And we're at 79. Next year we're going to be at 110 because you can see Isaiah Hill's going to get a bump. Longoria, Cota, Guzman will all be higher. Medrano, Flores, Mingo, all higher. Ricky Rios, the closer, is going to be getting a big number. Mike Wright will be higher. So we can sign someone really interesting to a one-year contract. We don't have a lot of money. We don't have any money for extensions right now, which will certainly complicate things. Because most top players are going to certainly want to be getting more than 1 year from us. Am I missing that Cuban pitcher? Feels like he should be listed here. Oh, yeah, he's right up top, Sergio Alvarez. He's absolutely tempting. I'm guessing he's not going to go for a one-year deal. I'm sure he won't coming over from Cuba. Yeah, 7-year deal at $18 million a year. I mean, the thing is, we could, if we wanted to get creative, take a ton of money out of these budgets. And it still doesn't open up any money for extensions for us. Oof. Oof. Yeah, only $11 million a year for extensions with that kind of money. So I have a feeling that Old Man Nutting will not approve us chasing after that pitcher if we decided to. Thinking about this upcoming year, need to reach the playoffs, need to improve our defense, need to re-sign Alex Vasquez, which we won't, and we need to increase our attendance. So a lot of things are going to make Old Man Nutting upset about. But he's made me very upset at times. He said some very hurtful things over the years. So I don't really know where we're going to go in free agency. Obviously was tempted by the pitchers, but that's probably not our hugest need. As I said, we got Longoria, Gonzalez, and Montoya back. We know that Gaona can handle the 5 role for us. So between Bin Daoud, Astorga, Valadez, Bath, it's probably time to go with the youth movement. Looking at the batters, not really sure where we're going to go. Always can use another bat. Matt Franks, first baseman. He's a respectable bat, but nothing all that exciting. Old buddy Sean Barley, former Rookie of the Year, is a free agent now. And let's just look at first base. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of just dudes out there, including Jaquan Hinton, who's looking for about $3 million now, but he's a guy. But Vinny Tomei is looking for 8. Kelvin Montgomery, oof. I'm gonna say he can play first and third, but he can't really play third all that well. Got some pop in the bat, but not a high average hitter. So there's nothing obvious to me for us to do, just taking a real quick look at who's available in free agency. That doesn't mean that we can't come up with something creative down the line. Doesn't mean that we can't find a interesting trade, which might be the way to end up going. Old buddy Juan Canseco is out there. Like his glove, like his personality. Not the greatest hitter in the world. Chris Brown, wrecked physically. Not that great defensively. Jesus Barreto, loved the glove, like the speed, like the personality, like the durability. Problem is the guy can't really hit. Looking at what he's done at the majors, 230 hitter, below average. So we've got money to spend. That is the good news. I don't know that there's an obvious target for us to spend it on. That is the bad news. But we will try to figure out where to go with that money in our next episode, when we really dig into the off-season, the beginning of free agency, the Rule 5 draft, and all of that kind of fun stuff. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.